Vinaka. My name is Clifford. Um, Today's presentation I will be discussing Apisai Tora and its impact in Fiji's history. The order of my presentation, I will first have my introduction and then move on to the impact of the introduction of indirect rule in Fiji. I'll then talk on Apisai Tora's time as a trade unionist. I will then discuss his political career and then move on to the Take movement of 2000 and have my concluding remarks. So Apisai Tora is formed not allowed in the province of Ba in the western side of Viti Apisai Tora was a complex individual known around Fiji as the most influential and controversial political figures in Fiji's history. He was a courageous champion of the workers and people of Fiji during his time as a trade unionist. He was also committed to a vision that saw cooperation and multiracialism in the country. However, on the contrary, some saw him as a racist who aimed at promoting indigenous sovereignty, Fiji for Fijians. This is a view that was held by most Europeans, which I will discuss later in the presentation. So, indirect rule in Fiji. In 1874, after session, the introduction of indirect rule in Fiji and the institutions that supported it set in motion the racial ethnic tensions in Fiji between the Tokes and Indians. So the native administration aimed to preserve the Fijian race and culture. However, it also restricted Fijian relations in Fiji. So the native administration consisted of mostly the Great Council of Chiefs, where the chiefs were mostly from the eastern part of Fiji, and there were usually no chiefs from the west. So this resulted in a patron-client relationship between the colonists and the Fijian chiefs, where the colonists ruled through the chiefs. In 1945, the increase in the Indian population exacerbated existing underlying fears of the Tokes. So in 1970, most of the administration structures that supported indirect rule was entrenched in the 1970 Constitution, and with it an ethnic-based electoral system. So both the Alliance Party, led by Kamis Esamara from 1970 to 87, and later the Songoni Vakuvilewa Nitauke, SVT, from 1991 onwards, used the massive network of patron-client politics through the Fijian administration. The Alliance Party depended heavily on the administration's network to survive. So the grassroots unity from indigenous Fijians for the Alliance Party was used to support class interests. The party was more accessible to the free market benefits than to the grassroots Fijians. Post-colonial era, 1970, saw some political figures such as Apisai Tora and the parties from Western Viti to challenge the Eastern-dominated oligarchy and gradually expose the dilemma of Fijian political unity. So, unionism. After serving in Malaya during the Second World War, Mr. Tora and other ex-servicemen returned and founded Fiji's urban town in Suva. The Wholesale and Retail General Workers Union, the Old Strike, led by General Secretary James Anthony of Indian and Irish descent and Apisai Tora, a Fijian, in December of 1959 was a significant point in history that left the field open for more moderate voices to be heard in the ensuing years. The strike saw Indians and Fijians cooperate with a common purpose, a movement of anti-poverty. Racial solidarity between the Fijians and Indo-Fijians was seen by the Europeans as anti-European and fostered a false sense of fear and hate towards them. The Europeans in the strike along racial lines as a revolt against them led to the colonial administration's attempt to restore order through Fiji's chiefs. So this further implanting racial divisions between the Fijians and Indians. So Justice Lord, New Zealand High Chief, he basically had these anti-European sentiments that basically the tensions wasn't along racial lines, but rather it was an attitude of have-nots to the haves. So basically the Europeans were more economically prosperous than the Fijians and Indians. So after the strike of 1959, the chiefs encouraged the formation of separate Fijian unions to not be corrupted or led astray by Indians. So this led the colonial administration, through the chiefs, to have a more ethnic-based trade union of Fijians and Indians. So there wasn't this, as you see in the picture, Apisai Tora and Joseph Anthony, of the multiracial trade unions at the time. It was now a more ethnic-based trade union. So Apisai's political career, party politics was introduced in 1960. Apisai Tora was a prominent pioneering politician from the West with political career spanning a period of 4 decades. Achieved an accomplishment unmatched in Fiji's history of party politics, where he formed 4 political parties originating from Western Fiji level. In 1960, he formed the National Democratic Party. In 1972, he served as NFP MP in the House of Representatives. In 1981, he joined the Alliance Party up until the coups of 1987. And in 1991, he formed the All National Congress. In 1998, he formed the Party of National Unity in coalition with the Fiji Labour Party. And this coalition eventually won the elections. It was named the People's Coalition. But Apisai Tora lost his seat and was not content with mandatorily putting an FLP candidate against him, and led to him reviving the Taki movement of 2000. And in 2001, he also formed the KVG party. The Taki movement, led by Apisai Tora in 2000, with the aim to remove the People's Coalition government through the legal means as soon as possible. It was believed that Shauri government did not work in the interests of the indigenous people. Mr. Tora criticized Mara for not responding directly to the petition calling him to dismiss Chaudhry's government, appoint an interim government, amend the 1977 constitution, and call for new elections. So in conclusion, the colonial powers played a major role in the ethnic divide between Fijians and Indians. The system of indirect rule introduced in 1874 that sought to safeguard the Fijian race also influenced racial tensions and discriminated the West from gaining any form of power vested in Eastern-dominated chiefs. It also gave rise to the patron-client relationship in Fiji's party politics that gave a massive network of supporters to the Eastern-dominated political parties like AP to govern for 17 years. Western Viti level despised the oligarchy of chiefs that existed in the East that benefited from their colonial rulers. Thank you. That's my presentation for you today. Thank you for listening.